When I hear the word retirement, I think how crazy it sounds saying out loud. Maybe it's not so crazy after all. What if I can crunch the numbers to see how realistic that outcome? What actionable steps are there to take to achieve the estimated 1.5 million to 3 million needed to retire? According to a survey conducted by the Federal Reserve, the average retirement savings is $65,000. This amount varies depending on age, income, desired retirement income. The average American under 35 years old only has $13,000 saved for retirement. So that's quite a large gap, $13,000 to 1.5 million. So how much do you need to retire in the US? Now they say 1.2 million, probably better to round up to 1.5, but this is assuming you only need 48K to live on per year, which I don't think that's realistic at all. What you really need is closer to $3 million. We've all seen people, whether it's our family or people that we know, when they go to retire, they have to downgrade their living situation to a smaller house or even apartment. They're pinching pennies just to have enough. Or worst case, they rely on their kids or the government for income in retirement. They didn't learn how to invest into their own portfolio. It deeply saddens me, but it also is a stark reminder that I need to not be in this situation. That's exactly where I don't want to be. Now, a typical financial advisor, they're gonna tell you can get an 8% return every year on your money, but that isn't factoring in their fees and commissions. It's easy to get 8% at the very least on your own. So we don't need to pay those guys to get an 8% return. Forget the 401ks, which they massively underperform the broad stock market every year. If the S&P 500 increases 8% a year on average, and in the last 10 years, 11.8% yearly increase, how much would I need to save to get the estimated amount that I need to be able to retire with? Most people look at their primary residence as their biggest investment / savings account. Let's crunch the math and see how reliable that actually is. Now, the average home today in the US sells for $495,000. So let's say you buy a home valued $500K. You put down a deposit of 10%, so $50K. In that, I get an interest rate of, let's say, 6.3%, which is pretty generous. Right now, it's probably closer to 7%. But if you do the math, the total interest to be paid throughout that 30-year lifetime is $553,000. Now, your total monthly payment until August 2053, that's gonna be $3,446. And that's not including the maintenance, home insurance, property taxes, HOA fees, all sorts of stuff. Now remember, you owe the bank $450K. And until you have 100% equity in that home, that's gonna be a liability on your balance sheet, not an asset. Average rent price is $1,700 right now. Compared that to the $3,500 I'm spending on the mortgage each month, I can make that difference go to investments. So let's do the math on the return on capital on a personal residence. And we're assuming that this is a house at the beginning worth $500K. But within 5 years, my home value is going to go up $174,000. Year 10, my home value just went up $391,000. 20 years, my home value increases by $794,000. 30 years, $1.1 million. Okay, so now my $500,000 house is worth $1.6 million. Where am I getting the math on the real estate value increase? I'm comparing to the hypothetical case where my home is worth $500K, and I'm comparing that to the United States FHFA House Price Index. And if you look at the index, we can see that the average home in the States increases by 6.25% each year. But remember, we have to also subtract the amount it costs to maintain the property, servicing the debt, paying off the interest, let alone the principal, home insurance, property taxes, the water heater, and roof every 15 years. If I make the average salary in the States, which is, let's say, $47,000, what happens if I contribute to my portfolio the same dollar amount as the average car note in the US, which right now I have $100 a month, which is $8,700 a year. And trust me, I know you can trim down your life to be able to do that, no matter if I make $47K a year or $27K. It's the end of the year, and now I contribute $8,700 into the S&P 500, and it gained 8%. So I got a gain of $700 at the end of the year. Okay, and I'm going to contribute another $8,700. Now at the end of that year, I have a gain of $1,400. And of course, ideally over time, you're going to increase that yearly investment from $8,700 and more each year, just to jumpstart the compounding effect. So let's do the math if I invest $725 a month into the S&P 500 rather than a car. So after 5 years, I get 51K. After 10 years, I get 133K. 20 years, I get 335K. 30 years, I get $1.1 million. Now we can compare the numbers on how that lines up with investing in the S&P 500 versus throwing your money into a mortgage. But remember, in the S&P 500 up here, we're only contributing $8,700 into the S&P 500 every year, compared to the real estate where I'm spending $3,500 a month paying down a mortgage. And that's $41,000 a year, just paying down the mortgage, right? So with significantly less money, I get the same result. Plus, I don't have to pay the living expenses associated with the house. So really, the math should be even different from this, but let's just live in a perfect world, right? But even then, I end up with virtually the same amount, only investing $725 a month rather than paying $3,500 a month. So imagine spending the average rent right now in the US, which is $1,700 a month, and investing the difference into the S&P 500, or even other ways of investing in real estate that doesn't involve debt and gives you a guaranteed yield of 4 to 6% a year. Most people don't know that if I want to get real estate exposure of any type, there is a way to get it without buying a home or commercial real estate. I can buy shares of real estate investment trusts on the stock market, and there's many different kinds. But the nice thing about REITs are that I buy straight into equity, no loan, no interest, and I get cash flow. Cash flow is from the dividends that you get, which basically just means I get paid to own the stock. Are they able to pay me to own the stock? Often companies and REITs will incentivize you to them by incentivizing you by the dividend. Particularly with REITs, they get a special tax relief from paying out the rental income over to the investors. So they basically don't pay taxes. And that's how you get such a high dividend. You can get a real estate investment trust that pays you a 4 to 6% dividend. So 4 to 6%, wait, remember the average home price increases 6% every year in value. Well, I can get that guaranteed return of 6% in a real estate investment trust from the dividend without incurring the cost of the home. Also, if the real estate market or the REITs grows and the value goes up, so will the values of my shares. So I could get two factors of growth from the dividends and the shares increasing in value. I was measuring an 8% average yearly return in the S&P 500. But what if I were to tell you that you should be using the S&P 500 performance as a benchmark? Meaning I think 8% is the absolute floor of what I should be getting. What if I could outperform the S&P 500 every year? Let's say I get an annual average return of 15%. One way to outperform the S&P 500 is to manage a long-short equities portfolio. Let's go back to the example that I contribute $8,700 a year into my portfolio, whether that's the S&P 500 or my long-short portfolio. In the long-short portfolio, let's bake into the formula that I'm making at least a 15% return on my money. So in 5 years, I have 76K. In 10 years, I have 211K. 20 years, I have $1 million. And then 30 years, I have 4.3 million. Compared to the S&P where I would only have 1.1 million after 30 years. So if we start investing right now in 2023 and planning to do so for the next 30 years, by 2053, I could retire like a king. But remember, in the years between, it's going to require delayed gratification. And then the next year is even more delayed gratification. So relying on third parties such as financial advisors, relying on your primary residence, your 401k or your savings, it's not going to be enough to get the $3 million needed to retire. We have to take responsibility and learn how the game works to get ahead and not end up like those people we've all seen who've had to downgrade their lives and pinch pennies just to have enough to live on, or worse, depend on the government. I made the Retirement Roadmap Scorecard, where you can test to see how good and realistic is your retirement.